Hello. So in Module 1, you guys learned about nature versus nurture. You learned about how the environments and the way that children are raised can impact what happens in their growth and development. And you also read about in the PowerPoints, if you haven't read them, go back and make sure you read the PowerPoints, um, about what happens with our genes and how that can impact a child's growth and development as well. This module, we're going to talk about something called teratogens and how teratogens affect a fetus, as well as what could happen after a child is born. So teratogens are any agent, any type of substance, any type of chemical that can harm an embryo or fetus. So these are things like drugs, alcohol, stress, caffeine. These are things that are outside agents that could impact the way that a child grows and develops. So because we know that these things can be really harmful for babies, it's really important that mothers and women who are pregnant have information about how this can affect their babies. So we know that there are many babies that are born with birth defects because they are exposed to teratogens. A majority of these agents that people come in contact with aren't always proven to be teratogens, but it's really important that women have access to prenatal care so that their doctors can make sure that the things that they're taking, whether it be vitamins, um, medicine for headaches, or prescription medication, if that's going to be harmful for their babies. So here's some things that could potentially be harmful for a developing fetus. One, like excessive heat, whirlpools, saunas, steam rooms, hot tubs, like those could have some impacts on a growing fetus. Herbal treatments, which are like those are the over-the-counter supplements that people often take for vitamins, or some other types of like natural supplements that they may be taking. It could also be different types of medication. I'm not going to go into medication because I'm not a doctor, but again, that's why it's so important that women have access to prenatal care so that they can get the list of like what types of over-the-counter drugs are safe for a woman when they're pregnant, because not all of them are treated the same. So, for example, like Tylenol and ibuprofen are not necessarily the same. Like some, you may be able to take one and not the other. Also, it's really important that women don't clean the litter box. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that or if you have cats and if you know that there is potentially a harmful parasite in cat litter that can cause toxoplasmosis in women. So women who are pregnant should absolutely not be responsible for cleaning the litter box. So if you're a woman and you have cats and you are planning on having a baby or you're pregnant right now and there is somebody else living in your house, make sure that they're the ones who are cleaning the litter box. Tell them that that is absolutely not something that you should be doing. It's not safe. So, besides that, there are things like, again, drugs and alcohol, and stress. And that's something I want to talk about right now is like stress. So, you guys will see in this module, there are some videos that I want you guys to watch. They're pretty powerful videos. They're really sad. There's a lot of information in them, but you'll learn about how alcohol can affect a child's growth and development. You'll learn about drug use. You'll learn about lead poisoning, especially the video that you're going to watch on that is about the water crisis that's going on in Flint, Michigan, which is still going on. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but there were many children who were being diagnosed with like developmental delays, challenging behaviors, and this one doctor and nurse who were finding that this was happening quite frequently, more so than they ever saw before, were like, "What's going on? Something's not right." And they found out that all the water in this town was tainted with lead, which directly impacts a child's growth and development. So read about that or like look up the information about that. so sad to think that that is like something that is still going on and that this community is not getting, still isn't getting all of the resources that they need. Um, but I want to talk about stress and why it's so important that women who are pregnant or are planning on becoming pregnant, like avoid stress. Stress can cause serious harm to a growing and developing fetus because there are chemical imbalances within a woman's body when she's stressed, or even men have like chemical imbalances as well when they're stressed, and it changes how their baby grows and develops. So we want to make sure that women have access to resources that they need, that they have a safe environment to live in, that they have people around them who are, caring for them and giving them, you know, the support that they need while they're pregnant so that their stress doesn't harm their growing babies. Also, like caffeine intake. So I know that that could be really hard for some of you who are like, "What? What do you mean? I can't have any caffeine." And if you're like me, you go to Starbucks whenever you're able to go to Starbucks or you like need your coffee every day. It's really important to try to cut down on the caffeine because we know that caffeine, it speeds up our heart rate because it can give some of us headaches. Like there are so many issues that happen with caffeine. So that's another teratogen. But make sure that you guys go ahead and read that PowerPoint. There's a lot of information on there. I didn't want to create a really long video for you because I know you guys are capable of reading. And so I put it all on a PowerPoint presentation. Um, Now I'm going to go ahead and go over what's going to be on your first exam. Give me just a second. I'm going to pull it up. All right. So your first exam is going to be on the first two modules. So the first two modules cover, I'm sorry, the first like three modules. So it's about the introduction, module one and module two, and that covers like what is child development. It covers the different developmental domains. It covered teratogens. It's covering nature versus nurture. So there will be a variety of different types of questions. So you'll have some short answer, you'll have some like essay questions, you'll have some multiple choice, and you'll have some fill in the blanks. So some of the things that you need to know and study is you need to be able to define what child development is. And that would be at the very beginning and the very in the introduction where I discuss like what child development is. There is a definition for that. You also need to be able to define the different domains of development. So you'll need to be able to define what a physical domain is, what the cognitive domain is, and what the social emotional domain is. Now, when I'm asking you to define what the domain is, I'm not asking you to list skills. So for example, if I say, what is the physical domain? Define the physical domain. And you just put jumping, running, skipping, hopping. That's not what it is. I'm asking for a definition, a sentence. Like, what is that looking at? That's looking at like the growth within the body and in the brain and the bodily functions. Um, there is going to be some matching as well, where you are going to need to look at some different types of skills and match it with what developmental domain it belongs to. So, for example, you might see the word counting, and you need to determine if that's the physical domain or the cognitive domain or the social emotional, or crawling, jumping, skipping, smiling, crying. Like those would be some of the skills that you might see on there. Um, there's a short answer question that asks you to provide some information on how a teacher could support an infant's development. So make sure that you're really comfortable with the domains of development because you're going to have to discuss like how could a teacher help an infant's physical growth and development? How could a teacher help support the cognitive growth and development, as well as how can a teacher support the social emotional development? Another short answer question is about nature versus nurture. You're going to need to discuss this controversy. Talk about like what does it mean? What is the controversy? What was like the outcome of this controversy? Also, if you haven't watched The Case of Jeannie, you need to make sure you do that because there is a short answer question about that. specifically looking at like what are some of her attributes that are nature, as well as what are some of her behaviors and things that are attributed to nurture. And then there is some true false questions about genetic testing. And you'll find this information on the PowerPoint that is about nature versus nurture. So I might ask you a question like, should parents who are under the age of 30 get genetic testing? I'm going to tell you right now, no, they shouldn't. They shouldn't get that because they aren't at that like 35 and older, right? Like they aren't recommended to have that. Um, is it recommended that parents who are of different races have genetic testing? No, that's not something. Is it recommended that a woman has genetic testing if she has repeated miscarriages? Yeah, that's something that's recommended, right? So there'll just be some questions like that. There's also some multiple choice questions about like chromosomes. So make sure you know how many pairs of chromosomes a person has. Make sure you know the definitions for genotype and phenotype, which again, all this information is on that nature versus nurture PowerPoint that you read. You need to be able to define what teratogens are. You also need to be able to talk about the different types of skills. So there's a question about empathy, like if you're reading an article about empathy, what developmental domain is that? Is that the social emotional domain? Is that the cognitive domain? Or is that the physical domain? There is a multiple choice question that asks you to give some advice to one of your pregnant friends. So think about like if you were to give somebody who comes up to you and says, oh my gosh, I just found out I'm pregnant. What do I need to do? Well, one of the first things that we need to do is that we recommend that they go get prenatal care, right? That they contact a doctor who can help them better than we can. You're also going to have to identify what attributes are connected to either nature or nurture or both. So, for example, you might see the word, let's see, a genetic disorder. Is that because of nature? Is that because of nurture, or is that because of both? Well, we know that that's because of nature, right? Now let's look at like weight. Is weight because of nature? Is weight because of nurture, or is that because of both? We know that weight is because of both. Eating habits. Is that because of nature? Is that because of nurture, or is that because of both? Well, eating habits would be nurture, and so on and so forth. And that's all that's going to be on your exam. So the best thing that I can tell you guys to do and the best recommendations is to read the PowerPoints that I have already published for you guys. All of the information on exam 1 is going to come off of that. All right. If you have any other questions, go ahead and send me an email. All right. Take care.